We all know that the mainstream media does nothing but lie, which of course is why trust in these institutions is basically in the toilet. I mean, how many times do you have to see somebody kneeling down in floodwater, posing in front of a gate, before everyone tends to catch on and say, you're all fake news, right? So whether we're talking about COVID vaccinations, you're talking about transition surgeries for kids, you're talking about election integrity, right? All of these things have been exposed to the public, and everyone's saying, yeah, why in the world are we listening to you anymore? Now, I'm going to give you an example of this from CNN, but first let me set the stage. The Donald Trump trial in New York City has essentially wrapped up, okay? But it was a fiery last day. But it depends on who you're listening to. It will determine how fiery you actually thought it was. So let's go ahead and start with this clip from CNN. However, before we get to the video, please like and comment. It helps me break through the YouTube gatekeepers. Let's check it out.
Stacey, Bob Costello was the final witness for the defense. Yesterday, Costello was loudly sighing. He said, ridiculous. At one point, he said, geez, after Judge Merchan sustained objections from the prosecution. Judge Merchan he admonished Costello and said, okay, so when there's a witness on the stand, if you don't like my ruling, you don't say geez, okay? And then you don't say strike it because I'm the only one that can strike testimony in the courtroom. Do you understand that? Costello said, I understand. The judge said, okay. And then if you don't like my ruling, you don't give me side eye. You don't roll your eyes. Do you understand that? Do you understand that? Costello says, I understand that. I understand what you're saying. The judge said, okay, thank you. Let's get the jury back. Wait, are you staring me down right now? Costello, no, I'm just wondering how. Merchan, clear the courtroom, please. Clear the courtroom. So, and then whatever happened after that, we don't know. Was Costello a good witness for the defense to end on? I mean, do moments like that stick with the jury?
Oh, yes, they stick with the jury. Robert Costello was a broken trigger misfire of a defense witness. I think he was an unmitigated disaster.
Now, supposedly, Jake Tapper right there is just reading the minutes as reported from the courtroom, okay? Because remember, there's no video cameras allowed in the courts. We can't actually see any of this for ourselves. However, they're talking about, the witness is being belligerent. He's being disrespectful. He's not answering the questions. He's not following the courtroom's orders, right? All of this stuff coming out that he's just awful. He's terrible, okay? But then, of course, the judge has this weird meltdown where he clears the courtroom. And Jake Tapper says, well, we don't know what happened after that. Or do we? It turns out that Alan Dershowitz, of all people, actually remained in the courtroom during what followed. And he had something very interesting to say on this whole topic. Let's check this out.
So let's bring in Alan Dershowitz, who was also there yesterday. Professor, you've seen a lot of court cases. What makes this unique? What did you see in person that you couldn't have imagined unless you were there yourself?
Look, I've been in courthouses in every part of the world, in China, in Russia, in Ukraine, in Israel. I've been all over. I've never seen a spectacle like this. And that's why it should have been on television, so the American public could see how outrageous this judge is. And CNN just does his bidding. CNN lies through their teeth about what happened in court yesterday between Judge Merchan and Bob Costello. Bob Costello testifies. Merchan rules against him at every point, keeps out his testimony, makes outrageous rulings that any first-year student taking evidence would know was wrong. And Bob Costello does what I did. He rolled his eyes, and I rolled my eyes. I said I couldn't believe the judge was making these rulings. And the judge, thinking he's a tyrant, clears the courtroom, throws out everybody from the media. For some reason, they allowed me to stay. And I watched as the judge berated him. And the judge did something I have never seen in a courtroom in my history, 60 years. He threatened to strike the testimony of the main witness for the defendant because of punishment of the witness for staring at the judge. Can you imagine the violation of the Sixth Amendment? The Sixth Amendment allows any defendant to confront witnesses and to present evidence in his defense. Can you imagine if this judge had actually struck the testimony of Bob Costello? It would result in an automatic mistrial, new trial, and a verdict against the prosecution.
Before we continue, I do want to mention Joe Biden, of course, is printing out a massive amount of money that causes huge inflation and devalues your money. So what can you do to protect your investments? You can take your 401k or IRA and convert it into a gold-backed security at Genesis Gold Group. And to access them, of course, you can go to angryteachergold.com or go ahead and call 1-800-200-4653 and get back on the gold standard. And by the way, Genesis Gold Group is a MAGA faith-based organization, so you can rest assured that you're not investing with a woke corporation. Let's get back to it. So Alan Dershowitz, who is a Democrat, who is a leftist of all people, has been actually very fair when it comes to describing this trial, right? He's pointing out everything as far as the lawfare is concerned that shouldn't be happening, as he just did in this clip. He's saying CNN is basically misrepresenting everything happening in this courtroom, things the judge are doing that are way out of line, that any first-year law student would be able to call out and say, that is not right, that is actually unconstitutional. And he was allowed to remain in the court after the judge, of course, had cleared the courtroom and listed all of these idle threats that, of course, go against precedent and due process for Donald Trump, right? I don't like the witness, so I'm going to hurt the defendant. That doesn't make any sense, okay? But here we have Alan Dershowitz really turning the screws on him. Now, of course, this whole case stinks to high heaven, and everybody who has a functioning brain can actually see that. But even the people on CNN, every now and then the light bulb goes off and they say, that just doesn't seem good. So let's go ahead and check this out.
So the jury instructions are so important. They're sort of dry, but they're crucial. They're the last thing the jury will hear before they disappear into that jury room to deliberate. And we, as a criminal justice system, we do the best we can. We try to have the judge explain it in non-legal, understandable terms. Some part of the jury instruction is easy to understand. For example, it's up to you, the jury, to assess the credibility of the witnesses. Anyone can understand that. Other parts get really deep into the weeds, usually when we get into the elements of the crime. And what happened today when the parties were arguing about what the jury instruction should be and should not be absolutely blew my mind. I need to call this out. We collectively, prosecutors, are pushing the boundaries of due process here. The general back and forth in the courtroom today was the defense lawyers saying, Your Honor, please tell the jury specifically what the other crime is, right? Prosecutors have to prove falsified records for another crime. Defense lawyers were begging him. They have to know what the other crime is. And prosecutors were saying, no, let's keep it very vague and general. It's a bizarro world. I know that there is some aggressive reading of the New York statute that says, well, the jury doesn't really have to know what the other crime is. But to me, that suggests that the DA's office is hell-bent on getting the conviction now and worry about the fallout later.
So this actually really blows my mind here, because Donald Trump, right, the whole case against him in New York City boils down to basically this. He falsified business records to cover up a political donation in a payoff to Stormy Daniels, okay? And somehow these misdemeanor charges, since there's enough of them, all compile together to become felonies, okay? However, there's another charge that no one actually knows what it is. Apparently, even the jury and the defense is begging the prosecution, begging the judge, please clarify this other charge against Donald Trump that supposedly the jury will be deciding that he's guilty of, all right? So basically the instruction is, hey, determine if he's guilty of anything. Do you feel he's guilty of at least something? Anything at all, doesn't matter, pertaining to this case whatsoever, then make your decision. That's basically what they're talking about here, which of course is standard par for the course for leftist kangaroo courts, all right? And that's why no one believes this is going to stand up upon appeal. And I'm hoping there's somebody in the jury who just says, yeah, this really seems like a railroad. Right? They're really trying to just persecute Donald Trump. And even though I hate him, I'm in New York City, I'm a leftist, I just don't see it happening. All right. And maybe we'll have somebody like that on the jury. But if not, there's always the appeals process, because at least according to Alan Dershowitz, who I don't particularly like, but I feel he's been very fair on his take on his coverage of this whole case. According to him, this will be easily tossed out because everything the judge is doing is so biased, so prejudicial that any first-year law student would say, nah, not going to happen. So as usual, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and stay safe out there, people, because they're coming after you.